The studio lights blazed down with an intensity that could make even the most seasoned television personality sweat. The air was thick with anticipation. Millions of viewers across the United States had tuned in that morning for what had been billed as a landmark interview, Kelly Ripa hosting Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, on live television. For weeks, tabloids and news outlets had been hyping the segment, teasing that Meghan was finally going to set the record straight about her life, her future projects, and her turbulent relationship with both the British royal family and the American press. Kelly, known for her charm but also her sharp tongue, was the one chosen to steer the conversation. From the very start, something felt unstable. Kelly Ripa welcomed Meghan with her signature dazzling smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Meghan Markle." The crowd erupted in applause as Meghan, radiant in a fitted ivory suit, walked onto the set. She smiled graciously, though her eyes betrayed a guardedness, as if she were bracing for impact. "Thank you so much for being here, Meghan," Kelly began, once the cheering died down. "Thank you for having me, Kelly," Meghan replied smoothly, her voice carrying both poise and caution. The first few minutes were calm, filled with small talk about Meghan's recent projects, her podcast, her philanthropic initiatives, her production company's new documentary. The audience clapped politely, clearly eager for the moment when Kelly would push the conversation into more dramatic territory. It didn't take long. "So, Meghan," Kelly said, leaning forward in her chair, "a lot of people admire you for speaking your truth. But there are also people who feel, let's say, that you've been complaining about a life most could only dream of. Do you think there's a chance you've lost touch with how regular people live?" The room went still. Meghan's smile froze for a fraction of a second. "I wouldn't call it complaining," Meghan replied carefully. "I would call it sharing an experience that many people, particularly women of color, or women navigating powerful institutions, can relate to. It's not about privilege, it's about humanity." Kelly nodded, but there was a spark in her eyes. She wasn't about to let it slide. "But don't you think," Kelly pressed, "that some of the struggles you describe, having security, living in a mansion in California, Netflix deals worth millions, don't exactly line up with the struggles of the average working mom who's, say, watching this show while feeding her kids before heading to a job she can barely afford to keep?" A few audience members gave nervous laughs. Meghan shifted slightly in her seat, her composed mask slipping just enough for the cameras to capture. "I've never claimed that my challenges are the same as every woman's," Meghan said firmly. "But pain doesn't discriminate. Isolation, bullying, racism, feeling unheard, those experiences are real, no matter your zip code or your income level. And if I can use my platform to highlight them, I will." The crowd applauded, though the tension between the two women was palpable. Kelly smiled again, but this time it was tight. "Fair enough. But, Meghan, some critics say that every time you highlight these issues, the story still circles back to you. To your suffering. Do you think you've maybe made yourself the center of the narrative a little too much?" That did it. Meghan's eyes hardened, and her voice lost its diplomatic edge. "Kelly," she said, "with all due respect, women are constantly told they're too much. Too loud, too emotional, too ambitious, too demanding of space. I refuse to apologize for taking up space. If telling my story makes some people uncomfortable, maybe they should ask themselves why." The audience erupted into cheers. But Kelly wasn't done. She leaned back in her chair, crossing one leg over the other, clearly ready to go toe-to-toe. "So, Meghan, are you saying that all criticism of you is rooted in sexism or racism? Isn't it possible that some people just don't like you, because of you?" A collective gasp spread through the room. Cameras zoomed in on Meghan, whose calm exterior was cracking under the relentless questioning. "Everyone is entitled to their opinion," Meghan said, her voice clipped. "But what I won't accept is being vilified for speaking about my truth when others in positions of power do the same without backlash." Kelly smirked faintly, sensing the rising drama that producers dream of but publicists dread. "Some would argue, Meghan, that you and Harry have built an entire career on criticizing the very family and institution that gave you the title of Duchess. Isn't there a contradiction in walking away from the monarchy but still capitalizing on the royal connection?" The audience oohed. Meghan sat up straighter, her face flushed now. "That's not what this is about," Meghan shot back. It's about creating independence, about taking control of our own story after years of having it controlled for us. If people can't understand that, perhaps they've never had their voice stripped away." Kelly tilted her head. "Or perhaps they see it as biting the hand that fed you." The tension was unbearable. The studio audience, who had expected some pointed questions, were now witnessing a verbal boxing match. Even the crew members behind the cameras exchanged wide-eyed glances. Meghan's jaw tightened. Her voice, once measured, now carried heat. "I came here today to talk about projects that matter, to talk about women's empowerment, mental health, equality. Not to sit here and have my character dissected and reduced to tabloid talking points. If that's what this interview is, then maybe this was a mistake." The air sucked out of the room. Kelly, unfazed, raised her eyebrows. "Are you saying you want to leave?" The silence that followed was deafening. Meghan looked out at the audience, some leaning forward with sympathy, others holding their breath in anticipation. She pressed her lips together, inhaled sharply, then unhooked her microphone from her lapel. The audience gasped as Meghan stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I won't be disrespected on live television," Meghan declared. "This is exactly the kind of spectacle that undermines real conversations. Thank you to those who came to listen with open hearts. I'm done here." With that, she strode off the stage, her heels clicking against the studio floor, leaving Kelly and the audience stunned. Kelly blinked, her professional instincts kicking in even as her eyes flickered with surprise. She turned to the cameras. "Well, that was unexpected," she said, forcing a small laugh. "We'll be right back after this break." The studio audience erupted into chaotic murmurs, some booing, some cheering, others pulling out their phones to tweet what they'd just witnessed. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team rushed to catch up with her, trying to calm her down as she made her way toward the exit. The story had already exploded online before Meghan even reached her car. Hashtags like #Meghan vs Kelly, #walkoff, and #live TV drama began trending within minutes. Clips of Meghan ripping off her microphone and storming away circulated across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. The fallout had only just begun. The studio was buzzing long after Meghan Markle's abrupt exit. Crew members whispered furiously behind their clipboards, while Kelly Ripa returned from the commercial break with her signature professionalism restored. "Well, Kelly," said with a polite smile, "sometimes live television doesn't go exactly as planned. But that's the beauty of it, you're seeing the real, unfiltered moments as they happen. Let's move on, shall we?" The audience laughed uneasily, but the moment had already seared itself into television history. The social media explosion. By the time the show wrapped, the internet was ablaze. Within the hour, hashtags like #Team Meghan and #Team Kelly trended globally. Clips of Meghan's sharp words and dramatic walk-off hit every platform: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, even LinkedIn, where professionals dissected the communication strategies on display. One viral tweet read, "Greater than, Meghan just did what every guest secretly wants to do when pressed too far on live TV. Iconic." Another countered, "Greater than, Kelly asked tough but fair questions. Meghan couldn't handle it and walked. That says everything." The divide was clear. Meghan's supporters praised her courage and refusal to tolerate what they saw as disrespect, while her critics accused her of being thin-skinned and unprofessional. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team. In a private black SUV outside the studio, Meghan sat in the backseat, her jaw clenched, as her communications advisor tried to strategize. "Meg, you know this clip is everywhere already," the advisor said, scrolling frantically through their phone. "The walk-off is going viral. Some are cheering, but others think it looks impulsive." "I don't care," Meghan replied, her voice sharp. "I will not sit there and let my life be reduced to cheap tabloid talking points." Kelly crossed the line. Her phone buzzed non-stop, messages from friends, allies, and journalists requesting statements. Among them was a simple text from Harry: "I'm proud of you. Call me when you can." For a moment, Meghan exhaled, allowing herself the comfort of her husband's words. But she knew this was far from over. Kelly's defense. Meanwhile, Kelly Ripa was already on the defensive. As soon as the show ended, she went live on her Instagram to clarify what had happened. "First of all, I want to say I respect Meghan," Kelly said into the camera, her makeup still flawless from the broadcast. She's accomplished, she's passionate, and she has every right to tell her story. But as a host, it's my job to ask the questions the audience is thinking. If guests only want softball questions, then what's the point of doing a live interview? The comments section lit up, some applauding Kelly for keeping it real, others accusing her of being condescending and provocative. Kelly doubled down later on her podcast, saying, "Greater than, I wasn't attacking Meghan. I was holding her accountable, like I would any guest. The fact that she walked off says more about her than about me." Royal family reactions. Thousands of miles away in London, the British tabloids wasted no time capitalizing on the drama. Headlines screamed across front pages. Markle meltdown on US television. Duchess storms out, can't handle the heat. Kelly Ripa stands her ground against Meghan. Inside Buckingham Palace, aides were reportedly both amused and frustrated. While the royal family maintained their usual public silence, palace insiders leaked to the press that the events only reinforce why the Sussexes were not suited for royal duties. A former royal staffer told a British paper, "Meghan has always struggled with criticism. Today was another example of her inability to accept tough questions." Harry speaks out. Prince Harry, however, wasn't silent. Hours after the broadcast, he appeared at a veterans charity event in Los Angeles. Reporters shouted questions at him as he walked in. For once, Harry stopped, turned to the cameras, and said clearly, "My wife stood up for herself today, and I couldn't be prouder. Nobody deserves to be disrespected on live television. Meghan is one of the strongest women I know, and her story matters. That's all I'll say." The clip went viral almost instantly, earning Harry praise from supporters who admired his public defense of Meghan. But critics argued it added fuel to the fire, painting them as professional victims. The public divide. Talk shows and opinion panels across the country debated the walk-off endlessly. Morning shows replayed the clip on a loop, with commentators dissecting every word, every gesture, every facial expression. One media analyst said, "Greater than, this is bigger than just a celebrity spat. This is about how women, especially women in the public eye, are treated when they refuse to play nice." Another countered, "Greater than, or maybe it's just about Meghan being unable to handle tough questions. Not everything has to be a grand narrative." Public opinion polls showed an even split, half supporting Meghan's actions, half siding with Kelly. The polarization mirrored the debates that had followed Meghan for years, since her marriage to Harry. Meghan's counter move. 2 days later, Meghan made her own move. She released a polished video statement on her foundation's official YouTube channel. Sitting in a serene garden with sunlight streaming behind her, Meghan spoke directly to the camera. "I walked off that set because I refused to let my voice be diminished," she began. "Too often, women, especially women of color, are told to sit quietly, smile, and accept scrutiny without pushback. I won't do that. Not anymore." She went on to shift the focus back to her advocacy work, highlighting new initiatives her foundation was launching in mental health and women's education. "I want the conversation to move forward," Meghan said. "This isn't about conflict. This is about change." The video garnered millions of views within hours, with supporters calling it graceful yet powerful. Even some critics admitted the production value and messaging were flawless. Kelly's response to the statement. Kelly addressed Meghan's video the following week on her show. "I watched Meghan's message, and I respect her perspective," Kelly said. "But I also stand by what I did. Asking hard questions isn't disrespect, it's journalism. At least, that's how I see it." The audience applauded, but the cultural divide persisted. The aftermath. In the weeks that followed, the walk-off became one of the most talked about television moments of the year. Late-night hosts made jokes, memes flooded the internet, and cultural critics debated whether Meghan had been ambushed or whether she had overreacted. For Meghan, however, the incident wasn't just a scandal, it was a turning point. Invitations poured in from platforms that promised her more respectful, long-form interviews. Her foundation saw a surge in donations. Her podcast downloads spiked. For Kelly, the drama boosted ratings as well. Clips from the interview became the most watched segment her show had seen in years. Even those who disagreed with her tuned in, eager to see what she'd say next. Closing scene. One evening, weeks later, Meghan and Harry sat together on the patio of their Montecito home, sipping tea as the California sun dipped below the horizon. "Do you regret walking off?" Harry asked gently. Meghan thought for a long moment. No, she said finally. Sometimes you have to walk away, not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to know your worth. Harry smiled, squeezed her hand, and nodded. Then the world saw exactly who you are. And for Meghan Markle, that was enough.